Alright everyone, so I just finished my Demonology guide and I'm going to go into the Affliction one. Now, I'm not really going to touch on Destro too much. If there are people that enjoy these guides and they do want a Destro guide, I will go into it. I'm not a huge fan of Destro right now. It feels a little bit too easy to play. It feels a little bit dull in my opinion compared to the other two specs, but I will go into it if people do want me to go into it. One thing I will say prefacing this guide is that Affliction single target is very, very easy. In my personal opinion, Affliction single target is very easy to do when there's only one boss. As soon as you increase to like 2, 3 additional targets you have to dot and maintain, it becomes a very challenging DPS rotation. So Affliction is a really enjoyable spec for me to play. I really like it. In its current state, I don't find it so bad. I'm going to talk to you guys about it. Unfortunately, Affliction is fairly gear dependent as well as Demonology. You won't really start seeing really high Affliction DPS single target numbers until you do get a lot of gear, but I believe you can have a lot of success in Mythic Pluses, especially with Affliction, if you know what you're doing. So again, the first thing I want to go over is talents, and then I want to go over gear. I'm going to go over relics, things like that, and then I'm just going to jump into DPS rotation. So for Affliction for talents, the first tier, Wrath and Agony, is the only option. I say that, Drain Soul, Haunt, you can try running them if you want to, but they're never just gonna get as much value out of Wrath and Agony in any situation, because if you are running, a more quick kill build, there are better talents to run besides Wrath and Agony. Besides these two. You can, you run something else where you're just doing something entirely different. You don't want to be using your globals on Drain Soul or Haunt. So Wrath and Agony is really the only tier you want to take for the first one. Only ever take this, especially for raid encounters, Mythic Plus, everything. Take this. I always take it 100% of the time. I do not recommend the other two. Maybe if you're questing or something, Haunt, fine, whatever. Max level content, run Wrath and Agony. The next tier is slightly more interesting, Absolute Corruption and Contagion. Contagion is just a flat 12% damage increase to every target affected by your unstable affliction, while Absolute Corruption just makes your corruption permanent, increased damage done by 25%. I usually only ever run Contagion, with the rare occasion that I do run Absolute Corruption. The times where you want to run Absolute Corruption is when you're going to be corrupting things that are going to be alive for a really long time. You have, 2 or more things to dot, you're maintaining all your dots on those things, and you just don't have the globals to, refresh Corruption. That's when you want to run Absolute Corruption. So for example, in a fight like Odin, where you have those ads that spawn, and you have, your Soul Effigy, that's 3 targets you have to dot. You do not have time to use your globals on Corruption if you want to get all your agonies out, or your UAs out, so you have to run something like Absolute Corruption in order to do that efficiently. The other talent, Contagion, obviously this is your bread and butter single target talent. It's going to increase your single target damage by the most possible by just doing, you're just doing 12% more damage to targets when they're affected by your unstable affliction. And this unstable affliction should be up, 85 to 100% of the time. Unstable affliction has a very high uptime, so this trait gains a lot of damage, so I would highly recommend picking this. For the next damage tier, I'm going to skip over these ones. Demonic Circle is basically the one you always want to be running. The choice in your 60 talents becomes between Siphon Life and Sow the Seeds. Siphon Life is really good for any single target encounter, any sort of 2 to 3 multi-dot encounter, while Sow the Seeds will take much, much further lead against, 4+ targets. Anything that has 4+ targets where you can pad on with this sort of button, huge damage, such a good ability, really good talent. I'll be showing you the the niches of when you want to use Sow the Seeds. So for example, Sow the Seeds is obviously very good on Helia, the last boss in Trials of Valor. When all those ads are up, you can just sort of be that guy on your team that AoEs them all down, takes them all out. On a fight like Guam or something like that, you're gonna want to be running Siphon Life. A lot more single target damage. You're able to dot your Soul Effigy as well as him with that, gain a lot of value. Level 75, I prefer to take Demon Skin. Dark Pact is also a really good option. Either or work. They're both just defensive traits. Obviously, Burning Rush is very good as well if you know how to use it. Not really going to go too in depth with these. For your level 90 talents, I would highly recommend always taking Grimoire Supremacy, as you don't have to worry about using a shard on Doomguard anymore. You don't have to worry about using a shard on Grimoire Service. That's one of the main problems with Grimoire Service, is you have to use 2 shards 3 extra shards every 3 minutes, as every 1 minute and a half you're going to have to be using one in a service, and every 3 minutes you're going to have to be using one in a Doomguard. This just eliminates that entirely. Your Doomguard does tons of damage. It recently got buffed. The only time I would ever really run service is if I needed an extra counterspell, or if I needed to do a lot of burst damage, as you can do a lot of burst by summoning an extra Fell Hunter as well as a Doomguard. So, Burst is more service, sustained a long fight, you want to do the most damage you can. Supremacy, I run Grimoire Sacrifice in dungeons. It's not really a huge DPS increase over Supremacy. It's a little easier to manage, you don't have a pet, things like that. It does do more AoE damage if there's a lot of mobs available. If there's not, Grimoire Supremacy will obviously take a huge lead. So that kind of covers the Grimoire talents. And for the last one, they're all good. All these talents are amazing. Soul Conduit is very good. Phantom Singularity is very good. Soul Effigy is very good. I would recommend running Soul Effigy for most every raid encounter. I run it on pretty much every raid encounter. It's very good. It increases your boss DPS by a huge portion because you're able to put all your dots on it, and all your dots being on your Soul Effigy, also being transferred to the boss. You can get more shards from your agonies, things like that. Very good talent. A lot of single target damage. Huge potential. Really like it. Phantom Singularity, obviously very good in dungeons. You can put it on a target, it will do just a massive amount of damage to everyone within 25 yards. Although I will say you have to be very careful with it because it will pull things that are not in combat. So similar to Hunter Barrage, you kind of have to just be a little cautious when using this ability. And an ability like Soul Conduit is just, a fluid ability. You get more shards to use more UAs. It's kind of a mix between the two. It kind of allows you to do more damage to a bunch of mobs. So say you have 3 targets to dot, you can get more UAs out on those 3 targets where you're not really wanting to use Soul Effigy. If it's single target, obviously you're just generating more damage than Phantom Singularity because you're getting more UAs in that time period. So Soul Conduit is kind of your mix between the two. A fight that might be decent to run Soul Conduit on is Odin, because you have so many different targets to dot during the encounter. You can gain a lot of damage from that Soul Conduit. Take your pick here. You do what you think is best. This is more of your AoE one, this is more of your single target one, and Soul Conduit is your in-between. The next thing I want to go over is gearing. So gearing is Affliction Warlock. Very difficult to get good gear. You want a lot of mastery. So mastery is by far your best stat. It's better than intellect for the most part when you're running a single target build. If you're running an AoE build, crit becomes better, but I wouldn't really worry about mixing and matching too much. I would just recommend getting as much mastery as possible because you're going to be worried about how much damaging you're doing to the boss most of the time. So you can see all of my gear pretty well has mastery on it. I basically do not have a piece. The only one I have is my gloves because they transfer over to Demonology as well that don't have mastery on them, but every single other piece that I have does have mastery on them. So I would highly recommend just getting as much mastery as you can, as it does just increase your 3 dots or 4 dot damage by a percent based. The next thing I'd like to say about gearing is haste and crit have about equal stat weight, with if you have more than the other one is better. So say I have too much crit, haste becomes better than crit. I have too much haste, crit becomes better than haste. It's just, you want an even balance of both of them, so you can see my haste and crit numbers are relatively similar, having slightly more haste, but mastery trumps all. So as much mastery you can get, and then just try to even out on the haste and crit numbers. Versatility is not really that good of a stat for Affliction Warlocks, as you can just not get enough of it to make it worth it. So that just covers gearing really quickly. You can see all my gear, just crazy amounts of mastery on it. Both my rings, mastery, haste, trinket just has mastery on it. Bracers, mastery, 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 just everything mastery, right? That's what you want. With a quick regard to legendaries, Affliction is sort of unplayable single target in my opinion, which is unfortunate without the helmet. Obviously it's not entirely unplayable, but the helmet definitely does help it out a lot. Agony deals its full damage 20% faster. Now if you don't know what that means, Agony usually has a base tick time, of 18 seconds, so it will start its clock at 18 seconds. Once you get that, it will start at 14.9 seconds and deal the same amount of damage. So obviously, that's not only a 20% increase in damage, you also get 20% more soul shards from Agony, so that's really, really good as well. So you really want to be wanting to go and get this helmet. I am very lucky to have gotten it. It is a huge DPS increase single target. It is the best Affliction legendary by far. This one. The other two that are really worth noting are the Shackles and the Power Cord. Now, the Power Cord is basically a Soul Conduit without having Soul Conduit, but better. So what I mean by that is casting Unstable Affliction on a target who's not already affected by it has a 25% chance to just refund the Soul Shard. So that's obviously awesome on any fight where you're able to dot a lot of targets and you're going to be spamming UAs on a bunch of different targets. This is going to take a lot of value because you're just going to be generating more shards, you're going to get you more UAs out, and UA is your hardest hitting damage as a UA Warlock, who would have thought. So this is a very good belt to get. The other legendary that's also very good to get is the Bracers, which just increase all damage dealt by enemy afflicted with your Unstable Affliction by 4%. So, you have two targets dotted with Unstable Affliction, your damage is increased by 8%. Really, really solid legendary, just a legendary that increases your overall damage by 4%. Single target is great. If you think about that, if you're doing 400k DPS, 4% of that is 10,000, I think. What? 4% is not 10,000. 4% of 100 is 4, so times it by 4. It's a 16k DPS increase, sorry. I've been awake for a long time. Shackles is a 16k DPS increase single target if you're doing like 400k DPS. Obviously, it's going to be more if you're able to dot more targets throughout the fight. It's just a really basic, solid legendary. You know, Mythic Plus, if you're able to, you know, UA 3 targets or something like that, 12% increased damage. Really, really, really good. Some other noteworthy legendaries is this one, which just, you know, Corruption slows the enemy movement speed by 60%. Really good, given the fact that in Mythic Plus, you know, you can put Corruption on everyone with Sow the Seeds or, you know, Seed of Corruption. And slowing the enemy movement by 60%, you know, that's freaking awesome. You know, the tank can kite, you can kite. If you need to run away, you can do so. The other legendary that's really worthwhile mentioning is the Nornagon's Foresight. This legendary is awesome. And I'm going to show you right here why the legendary is awesome. So I just got the proc. Affliction has so many instant casts that you're just going to get getting this proc, like, you know, all the time. And what you can actually do is you can cast Drain Life while moving, and the buff doesn't go away. It's amazing. So on any sort of fight, you know, you're going to be getting this proc all the time. You can cast your UAs while moving. You know, you get it again. You can cast your Drain Life while moving. You're basically just like a mobile god. You don't lose damage from movement, which is freaking awesome. So that's also another really good legendary to get. So those are the good legendaries. Those are the ones that I really wanted to talk about. That's kind of how gearing wants to go. I just kind of want to get over gearing and things like that really quickly because I feel like most people just want to go into how to do damage. The last thing I want to talk about is your weapon. The way you want to go with your artifact trait is you want to get your Crystalline Shadows, then you want to go down to your Inherently Unstable, and then you want to move over here and get these gold traits. These gold traits are amazing for AoE, they're super awesome, they're super good in Mythic Plus, they're okay in rating, they're super average in rating, but in Mythic Plus, these are great talents. Obviously you pick up some additional damage talents while doing that. After you do that, you want to go over and get your Agony talent, which just increases agony damage, which is like usually my #1 damage. It usually varies between agony and UA, so obviously really valuable talent there. You get your Shadows in the Flesh, and then you get your last gold trait. So just again, you want to go to here, you go down here and get these 2 gold traits, and then you move back up to get your last gold trait. After you get Harvester of Souls, you want to get 3 points in Drained to a Husk, and then you get your Fatal Echoes, which is an awesome talent. It just, you know, if you think about it, it really just increases your UA damage by a little over 12% because it does have a chance to proc off itself again. But, yeah, 12% because when you unleash your weapon, it increases the proc rate to 12%. So it's basically a 12% increased damage on UA. Really, really good. After this, you want to go into Seeds of Doom, which increases damage dealt by the Seed of Corruption Explosion by 15%. After that, you know, Compounding Horror, your last one, and then your Soul Stealer. So that was really quick, just the artifact weapon guide. Yeah, it's pretty basic, you know. Just go get these 2 gold traits and then get your last one. Get Fatal Echoes after that. Pretty basic. So before I start talking about damage rotations, I just want to say, Affliction is by far the best Mythic Plus spec for Warlock. Like, by far. Like, most dungeons, if I'm doing, like, carries 4 to 6 or carries 7 to 9, I'm able to pump way over 500k DPS, sometimes close to 600k DPS throughout the whole instance. Really, really good. Your single target isn't great, but your cleave is absolutely amazing. Besides that, if you don't have a lot of gear, a single target really isn't worth playing for Affliction, as it's really hard to do a lot of damage, but I will cover it just because, you know, as an Affliction Warlock, your single target damage will be the best Warlock spec in Nighthold, because look at the set bonus for Nighthold. Bam, Unstable Affliction deals 20% more damage, and Agony generates 25% more Soul Shards. Amazing. Like, Affliction will be the best spec, so that's why I'm switching to it. So, real quick, I just want to talk about the single target rotation. It's really, really straightforward and basic. Yeah, so I just always keep my Soul Effigy on focus, just so I can see it, and I can see the dots on it. How you want to start your rotation is you have 3 Soul Shards. You just want to start by getting your 3 dots out. You want to get an Unstable Affliction on that, and then you want to dot your Soul Effigy, and then you just Drain Life. I mean, it's a really basic, straightforward rotation. Basically, the idea of it is you just want to be maintaining your dots on the pandemic timers, and besides that, you just want to have as much high uptime as UA as possible. Just remember also, though, if you're not capped out on Soul Shards, you are not wasting damage anyway whatsoever. You are not losing damage. You are not, you know, nothing's happening. You're not losing damage if you're not capped out on shards, right? Like, because, you know, you can use your shards whenever you want, as long as you're only using UA one at a time, because you want to maintain that 100% contagion uptime. Now, obviously it's fairly easy to do this damage rotation, and it's not a very difficult damage rotation to maintain. The things that, can push you ahead of the other warlocks in the game single target are going to be the usage of your artifact trait and your usage of soul shards. So the reason I want to talk about that is when you pop your Tormented Souls, you're doing 10% increased damage and you double the effect of the traits. Now, because of my helmet, I tend to get an excess number of soul shards even though I maintain my agony on the target. So what I mean by that is, even though I'm maintaining, roughly 100% uptime on Unstable Affliction, I still generate more soul shards than I can spend by just using one at a time. So what that means is, when I have, the option to spend a lot of soul shards, that's when I'm going to be wanting using my Unalesh, because I will have a higher probability of refreshing these UAs, plus these UAs are just doing more damage. So really look out for situations like that where you're able to either A, multi-target dot, or you're refreshing your UAs on somebody, because if you're going to pop a lot of UAs, use your freaking artifact weapon. Like, use it. I really wouldn't use it too much out of, stacking a bunch of UAs. Obviously, you don't want to go down to 0 UAs because you do want to maintain that that contagion uptime buff. But as you see, with one target, the single target damage rotation is fairly easy and straightforward. You just want to maintain 100% uptime on corrupt or on Unstable Affliction, maintain your pandemic dot timers, and yeah, never go over soul shard cap. You're good. It's pretty straightforward. Drain life is a filler between your dot timers, As much time as you can get drain lifing, the more your DPS will go up, obviously. So yeah, just make sure you guys are doing that. You see I have a few extra soul shards. I kind of want to pop my stacks here, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to blow through my soul shards or whatever, right? So yeah, it's a pretty basic single target rotation. Obviously it becomes a lot more difficult when you have 2 targets to dot, because you want to maintain dots on that one, your main target one, and your soul effigy. So I'm going to go over that in just a little bit. So that's your single target damage rotation. It's fairly straightforward, but a lot of fights as UA, you're not going in the fight trying to single target damage rotation the boss, right? Like, you're trying to go in and do damage to a lot of targets. So that's the next thing I wanted to go over, and this is when you're going to want to spec into Absolute Corruption. So this fight is going to be very relative of a fight of Odin. Now, the hard part about this is maintaining 100% dot time. Now, I don't use add-ons, so it's a little bit more difficult for me, but if you do use add-ons, it's probably going to be a little bit more easy for you to see your dot timers. So, the way that you want to work about UA during the fight of having 1, 2, 3 dot targets is you want to maintain 100% uptime on 20 agony stacks. Now what this means is just never let your agony fall. It is your number 1 damage. You lose so much damage if you let your agony fall. I cannot stress this enough. Do not worry too much about keeping 100% uptime on UA, because you're not running contagion anymore. You just kind of want to dump them whenever you have the option to dump them. So yeah, so basically what you want to do is you want to start out dotting the 2 main targets that you're going to be DPSing like this. So you just want to get your 3 dots on each of them. Then you're going to want to switch to your soul effigy, dot him up with your 3 dots. And your agony is going to be falling really soon on your main target, so you're going to refresh that. Then you're going to want to start dumping your UAs while you have the ability to. Switch over to other target, refresh those dots, refresh these dots on your soul effigy. And then you just want to dump UAs in between. So it's not like a super difficult damage rotation. The only hard part is you never, ever, ever can let this fall off, ever. You lose so much damage, potentially if you do. Don't worry too much about drain lifing. If you fuck it up and you mess up, you will lose too much of a portion of damage, and it's just no longer going to be worth it. So, as you can see, you just really want to be maintaining these dot timers. Obviously, if you can do it within Pandemic, you're going to be doing more damage than I am, but basically the idea is you just never want to really let them fall off. Just never let your dots fall. Don't let your dots fall. You'll do a lot of damage on 3 targets. Make sure you're keeping those 20 stacks. When you get a bunch of soul shards and you're able to have a time where you want to dump them, pop your Unalesh stacks, get a bunch of UAs up on them, and then just maintain your agonies on the targets, Just make sure you're maintaining the agonies. I'm refreshing a little bit preemptively, but, maybe on a fight where I'm trying to try hard and push rank 1 parse, I'd be a little bit more better at it. But, don't be too hard on yourself if you're having a hard time managing them, you know what I mean? Just keep up your dots, you'll do a lot of damage. You see, on a triple dot target fight like this, I'm maintaining 450k damage, easy. So that's just something that's really important to note. Make sure you're maintaining your 20 UA stacks. If they fall, you lose a lot of damage. Okay, a lot of damage. Do not let them fall off. So those are your single target and kind of cleave target damage rotations. You just want to be maintaining your dots. Make sure you're spending your Unalesh stacks at smart times, and yeah. you'll manage as a UA warlock. You know, it's not too bad. It's not too shabby. On multi-dot targets, you're gonna be doing great. The next thing I kind of want to go over is your Mythic Plus specs. Now, you say specs. There should only be one Mythic Plus spec. Run Sow the Seeds, Contagion, and Phantom Singularity. No, there's actually two Mythic Plus specs that I like to run. One of them is for when I'm running a more single target build where my group can't pull as much trash. And if you can't pull a lot of trash, obviously you don't gain as much benefit from Sow the Seeds. If you're not getting a lot of benefit from Sow the Seeds, obviously you're going to want to be running a more UA heavy build and also be running Siphon Life. So UA is absolutely insane for AoE DPS, and I'm going to be showing you why in just a second here. So these are just 3 mobs, right? These are just 3 targets. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to want Agony on all 3 of them to start. You're going to want to cast Seed of Corruption. You're going to want to start refreshing your Agonies as those seeds are exploding, because they do take a second to explode. Once they explode, you're just going to want to start spamming Seed. So just keep spamming Seed of Corruption here until your deck falls off. Refresh your Agony stacks. Make sure you're keeping your Agonies up, you know what I mean? Just make sure you keep your Agonies up, and then just spam Seed of Corruption. Super, super, super duper duper easy to play. In between fillers, you can just, cast Drain Life. You can keep spamming Seed, whatever you want to do. Keep your Agonies up. You will do tons of damage. These are 3 targets, right? And I'm not even using Phantom Singularity, or my Unalair stacks, or have we killed anything recently, right? So, this is why UA is absolutely bonkers for Mythic Plus. Obviously, you're going to lose a little bit of damage based off this because you're not going to be able to have 20 Agony stacks on 3 targets in a Mythic Plus. Most likely they're going to die a little bit before that, but that's the general idea. Sow the Seeds, super, super duper powerful talent, Mythic Plus. Now, the next thing that I want to mention is Phantom Singularity usement. So I'm going to let all my dots fall and then sort of talk about that. With Phantom Singularity, you saw as I was waiting for my Corruptions to pop in the opener, I was refreshing my Agony stacks. When you're running Phantom Singularity, you don't have to do that, because your Phantom Singularity will do enough damage to pop those for you. So on a fight where you're going to be bursting a lot, or you need a lot of damage, you can pop your Unalair stacks and then Phantom Singularity, get some Agonies out, and then start spamming your Seed of Corruption. So I'm just going to show you what that kind of damage looks like here. So I kind of do that. I start casting Seed of Corruption early, because my Phantom Singularity will pop it. I get my Agonies out on all 3 targets, and then I just continue to cast Seed. And you see, once my Seeds start popping here, my damage is just going to be, it's going to be really high. That's the basic idea. And you saw before, I was maintaining, 600k DPS with 20 stack Agonies. I don't even have 20 stack Agonies yet, and I'm still over 700k on 3 targets. Obviously, my Phantom Singularity is hitting a little bit more than that, but that's the basic idea of the rotation, right? You want to pop your Unalair stacks before you go in. When you go in, you can maintain these, at least 3 Agonies, I would say. I would say it's not really worth it to maintain more than 3 Agonies, but maintain your 3 Agonies and just Seed whenever you have a Soul Shard like this, and you just do tons of damage. Absolute Corruption is not necessary to run because Seed keeps refreshing your corruption durations on trash, and Contagion will just increase your boss DPS by 12%. Pretty good, right? So it just adds a little bit of a flavor to your single target rotation to do more damage. Obviously, single target is very boring as you only have 2 dots to maintain, and in between you spam Drain Life, like this. That's your single target. It's really, really basic. So I'd recommend running this sort of talent for if you're doing heavy AoE Mythic Plus dungeons. You'll do a lot of damage no matter what your gear is. Very, very, very good spec to run. The other spec that is an option for you to run is you can change to running Siphon Life. 1 second, I just need to get out of combat here really quickly. Siphon Life and Soul Conduit. I'm still in combat. Why am I in combat? I'm still gaining things. What's going on here? Okay, so Siphon Life and Soul Conduit, and the way that you run this is your group is only pulling maybe 2 or 3 mobs in the instance, each pull. They're only pulling 2 or 3. So the idea here is you just want to maintain your dots on 2 to 3 targets. So you just kind of go around like this. Obviously, it might be a little bit more efficient to do what do you call it? Seed of Corruption to keep your Corruptions out, so you can press a Seed of Corruption to get 3 Corruptions out on the targets. Just a little bit more global efficient, right? And then you just want to start spamming your UAs. Like this. So you just want to maintain your dot uptime on all these targets. So I'm going to use Seed again here just to keep everything going. So obviously you do not do as much damage as the Sow the Seed rotation, but if you're not pulling in a lot of mobs, you're going to do a lot better overall running this sort of a build if you're not able to pull as many crazy amounts of packs as you can. So I'd recommend running a build like this if your group isn't really comfortable pulling a lot of pulling a lot of mobs and you want to kill shit a little bit quicker like that, you still do decent damage. You see, like, I'm still pulling, like, 600k DPS, and I'm not doing this near close to perfect at all. I'm not doing this anywhere close to perfect, and I'm still pulling, 600k DPS, and I still have, 5 soul shards. The other bonus is your single target damage is also very high as this build, relative to the Sow the Seeds build. So, Affliction is a great Mythic Plus build. I would highly recommend you guys utilize running it. Those are the sort of 2 different talent specs that I like to run when I do Mythic Plus. As Affliction, and I do run Affliction in Mythic Plus, so just give it a try. It's a very, very, very good spec to run there. So this was a much quicker guide than the demo one. Affliction doesn't really have as much to say about Demonology because the damage rotation really isn't as complex as Demonology's is. Really the only thing is using your Innerlesh stack is a good time for a single target, and then maintaining 100% uptime on your dots, utilizing that pandemic effect that Blizzard has implemented to all specs. So yeah, that's just a quick Affliction guide, a lot quicker than the demo one, but I think it covers pretty much everything I want to talk about. If you want to know more about it, you can ask, and I'll try to answer them. So thanks for watching, guys, and yips out, dude.